Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have a very interesting discussion today because we're going to be talking about things that we don't often talk about on a business podcast, but they're very important, not to just business, but to our lives. And so please join me in welcoming Bersabeh Ray to our program today. Welcome, Bersabeh. How are you doing?
Hi, Deb. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. I love it. You have one of those fabulous radio voices. Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell folks a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Bersabeh Ray is the driving force behind Harmonic Wealth Global, a legacy born where grit met grace. Alongside James Arthur Ray, a fearless trailblazer who conquered life's heights and rose from the ashes, they forged a vision of harmony and abundance. Tragically, James passed away in January of 2025, but his dream endures. Now, Bersabeh, an intuitive powerhouse whose own path from hardship, and I'm going to say extreme hardship, to healing inspires, and she carries the torch. Honoring James' mission, she guides you to break free from fear, align with purpose, and transform struggles into strength. Ready to rewrite your story and embrace true wealth and well-being? Bersabeh lights the way. So again, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Deb. I'm happy to be here. Well, with that introduction, I'll just leave.
I know. It's always so funny when we hear our own bios. I'm always like, cool, when I hear mine.
Yeah, sure.
But, it really is incredible, everything that you have gone through. And it was funny. I was talking with somebody earlier today about they think of life as mountains where you go up the mountain and then into the deep valleys. And it'd be kind of nice sometimes if it was nice and level and flat, but that's not going to happen. And that might be kind of boring. But you have had an incredible life. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. I'll start with where I grew up, where I was born. I was born in Iran at a time where Iran and Iraq were at war, and also the revolution was happening at the same time. So my first childhood memories is having bombs drop in our neighborhood. And if you could just imagine, you go outside your home, count 5 houses down, and imagine a bomb dropping. I mean, these are the things that I remember. And it was either you hear the missiles dropping or they were being shot out, you hear gunshots, and at the same time, there was protests going on in the streets too. So there was no sense of safety or security. And given that the revolution was going on at the same time, the military, let me back up a little bit. It was the Islamic Republic that took over Iran. And what happened is they gave a lot of hard time to people who were Christian, Jewish, and of the Baha'i faith, which is what I grew up in. And what they did was either they threw you in prison or the women would be raped and, people would get killed. A lot of people died during that time. And unfortunately, on one evening, the military kicked down our door and ripped my father out of the house and threw him in prison. Now, going to prison there, that pretty much meant that you're probably never going to see that person again.
Right.
They're going to get persecuted. They're going to die. And my mother, unfortunately, did experience getting raped by the military, which was horrific. And I've experienced some things of that nature too myself, being there in that country at that time. And so my father luckily was able to get out. When he got out, then my parents decided that, this is no place for us to have a life. I mean, first of all those religions that I named, the faiths, you could, especially the Baha'i people and Christians, and the Jewish, I'll say all of them, you couldn't be able to own a business or go to school to get an education. And, and if you're a woman, forget it. And, a lot of people, if you go back and look at pictures from the 1970s, 60s, from pictures of Iran, it looks like you're looking at pictures from Europe. That's how different it was. And when the day that the Islamic Republic took over and the Ayatollah Khomeini came, they said from this day forth, all the women have to cover up. Now, if you would have told them that 10 years prior to that happening, they would have said, you're crazy. That's never going to happen.
That's not how we live.
No. And yet it all turned around within just a few hours. Just something to keep in mind with what's going on in our world today, which a lot of people can relate to. So given that we couldn't be able to have a life, for me being a female, even my mother and even our faith, and you don't really have sovereignty within that country. You don't have the freedom that you have here in the States to say, this is my faith, or this is my, just those simple things.
Right.
So parents decided that we need to leave the country. And the way you left the country is that you couldn't just get up and leave. We had to escape. So we found people that smuggled us out of the country. And how that happened is, one night I remember we all got into this back of this pickup truck, middle of the night, dead night, driving through the desert. It was pitch black dark, at the risk of being caught, and that meant death.
Right.
Prison
yeah, there
death.
was no question, no nothing. It was just you were going to die.
Yeah, there's no in between about that. And luckily, we were able to cross over the border, and we went to Pakistan. We lived in Pakistan for 2 years so that we were able to get our visas and come to the States legally. And once in Pakistan, it's got its own story of all the things that happened there. I'm sure you can imagine. When we got to the States, we first moved to, where was it? California. And having to start over, my parents having to start over, we don't speak the language. And you can imagine, they went to work at 5 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. And so the kids, us, we had to raise each other.
Right.
And we
How
lived
old were you?
When I finally got to the States, I was about 10 years old.
Okay. And you spoke almost or no English?
None. But the thing is, though, when you're a kid, you could pick it up pretty quickly. I remember going to school and I would sound things out because I thought they meant a certain thing. And the way I actually learned to speak English was watching television. And I would watch these New York gangster movies, like, the Casino Pacino and all those guys.
Oh, that's a real good way to learn English.
It is, because I get a lot of people that ask me, they're like, "Oh, are you from the East Coast?" And I'm like, "No,
you sound like you're from Boston."
Yeah, no, not exactly. I'm way east. Go over there,
keep going.
Overseas, overseas. So, given that they had to work most of the time, and we were by themselves, we had to raise each other, and we lived in, not so great communities because money was a tough thing to come by.
Something.
Exactly. So you can imagine what our environment looked like and where we lived. So I got into a lot of hanging out with the wrong crowds, getting into gang behavior and so forth. I got into drugs and so forth at an early age, and smoking at an early age, and drinking and so forth. So I was headed down not in a very good direction. And that continued. I've had that struggle with anyone who's had addiction. They know what I'm talking about, is that I've had that struggle most of my life.
And it doesn't just poof go away.
No, it doesn't. Now, and I'll get into why we have these, because one, I got to a point, and this happened when, I'll fast forward a little bit, I got into a really, I thought, I'm going to get married, and I've made a decision. And he was also a Persian man and so forth, same background, whatever. And what happened was that relationship turned out to be the most horrific relationship that I've ever gotten in my life. It turned out to be physically abusive and verbally abusive. And after that divorce, I got to a point where I sat down and I said, okay, why is it that I keep ending up in this place? Meaning, why am I marrying a person like this? Why am I smoking, for example? Why am I drinking alcohol? Or, name the vices, the bad habits. Why am I the one that's, making these decisions? And it took that last hard hit, you can say, to make me go inside and ask myself, okay, what am I doing that's causing all these effects? Because we talk about here at Harmonic Wealth Global is that the first step is that you have to take absolute responsibility for your entire life.
And most people don't.
No, because they want to say, and I understand it, they want to say, well, wait a minute, what do I have to do with the fact that these things happen to me? And I would say, okay, well, what are you doing to contribute to those things? That's when you need to take responsibility and ask yourself, what am I doing here? Because up until a certain point, there might be situations that happen to you. For example, mine. I was born in a country where there was war and so forth. It happened to me.
You had no choice.
Right. But at some point, I'm making the decisions to reach for that cigarette or to go around the wrong crowds because I don't know how to cope with the things that happened to me as a young child. So the moment you take full responsibility, you're no longer in the victim mode. Now you're sitting in the driver's seat. Now you control your life. And that is a very powerful position to come from. So once you do this, then things start to shift. And I'll go on to, after all of this happened and I start making the changes, this is where James and I met. And James is his story is a little bit different because his childhood was much nicer than mine. Grew up in this.
He was an American. It's going to be nicer no matter what.
It was way nicer. He was an American. He grew up in an environment where mom was home all the time. She was an at-home mom, so kids come from work. There was mom, how was your day? It was something like you see in the movies.
Yeah, a little leave it to Beaver, happy days.
Exactly. His father was a pastor, so they would go to church 3-4 times a week. He was a minister himself. So, and James had reached the top of, you could say, of this physical success. And what I mean by that is the fame, the fortune. He was on Oprah. Oprah offered him his own show.
Wow.
Larry King. Larry King a couple times, once a month on the Today Show. And so everybody wanted, he was rising so fast that he was becoming, you could say, they called him the rock star of the personal development. And they were comparing it, like he was him in the middle, and then there was a Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra, and you remember all the names. And then they said, you take all those guys, you got James Arthur Ray. And that's where he was. And unfortunately, he had a really tragic accident that happened. And in that event, 3 people ended up losing their lives.
Oh my gosh.
And this was in the sweat lodge that took place. And in that sweat lodge, what had happened is that he had 32 counts of prosecutorial misconduct, which you only need 1 to be able to dismiss the case. They had a Brady violation. I mean, there were so many things to say, hey, this was an accident. You shouldn't be charging this person. And, unfortunately, there was a lot of political, as we've seen it happen in our world today. It's becoming more evident. Needless to say, when I met him, he had just gotten out of prison. He ended up going to prison for 2 years for negligence. They wanted him, they convicted him of homicide in the first degree, which is intentional harm.
Right. Yes. Oh my
Which is
gosh.
wild. It was an absolute accident. I mean, you go to these retreats or these workshops because you're trying to help people for one, and those people are trying to heal. The last thing you're going to do is what happened. So then, and we've also seen this happen in the media, nowadays. The media turned against him. Now he becomes the villain. So they take him down. He ends up going to prison, loses everything. Not only he loses everything he worked for, he lost his reputation. He lost 3 people that he cared and loved for, and so forth.
And just the mental anguish of going through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you've reached the height of success and you're making great money, millions, and you're in the eye, and everybody wants a part of you, and Oprah is giving you a deal and so forth, and then it's all ripped away, and then they start calling you a murderer, and they start calling you, they just destroy you. So he had that fall. And when I first met him, I had gotten out of my divorce, and I had seen him, he was speaking somewhere for the first time. And I saw him on stage, and the way he was talking and the things that he was talking about, it was so raw and real. And it resonated with me at the time because I was going through my own pain. And I've never heard anyone from the personal development industry be so, because one of the bad things about personal development, they always say, you gotta be positive. You just gotta be positive. Put a smile on your face and just
positive.
Keep going. Think positive. Think positive, and everything's gonna work out. Well, sometimes life positively sucks.
Right.
And that's just a fact. And James was the opposite of that. He got up there and said, no, there are hardships. And the way that we grow the most is in the crucible of challenge. It's not sitting and, sipping the fine wine and smelling the pretty flowers and so forth. It's our scars that bind us, that we bond together. It's the sufferings that we've gone through that connects us and bring us closer together. So given that I experienced him in person, and I didn't know anything about the accident. He even talked about it on stage, and I thought, well, what happened? So I go and look on Google.
Right. We Googled it, right?
Yeah. I Google it, and it's something you don't want to do. I looked on Google, and I thought, this doesn't match the person that I met. And given the background that I have, I learned early on that the government does not have your best interests at heart. They don't care about you. Given that I know that and haven't experienced that, I knew there was something wrong here. They didn't smell right. There was something wrong. So I actually reached out to him, and I started working for him at first. So I started working with him with Harmonic Wealth Global. And at the time, mind you, he was $20 million in debt.
Wow.
Imagine you come out of prison, you're homeless, $20 million in debt, and you got to start all over at 57.
Most people would have not.
No, they wouldn't. That's like a recipe for you to curl up in a ball and never leave.
Yeah. Or maybe you just do the bare minimum to survive.
Sure. Or you completely change the industry that you were part of and go do something completely different.
Right. You're like, I'm not doing that. That didn't work.
No. And then at the same time, you start, because here's what happens, Deb, and it's happening to me, and I've experienced it now, given that I've lost James so suddenly, unexpectedly, because it wasn't expected. It was just completely out of nowhere. And the reason why it was out of nowhere, and I'm kind of fast forwarding here, is because the lives that we live, we're very healthy individuals, and we walk our talk. So our lifestyle is everything that we teach other people as our practices.
Right.
So it would be very easy for me to turn around and go, you know what? This stuff doesn't work.
Yeah. Why have we bothered to eat well and live well and be faithful and, all of those things?
Exactly. And yet I will tell you, it is the very reason I keep continuing, because this stuff does work. Because ultimately, this life that we're living right now is not the real, it's not reality. This is, think of it as a school that you've come to work through, to wake up. Okay. And that's what we teach. We teach that what is most important is to get back to our center. And what does that mean? Our center is in the sacred teachings, is the throne of God. And that's where we all are meant to go back to and live from and towards. So it's kind of like, I don't know if your viewers or yourself are familiar with the movie The Matrix. I'll use that as a mundane example, sure. But that's exactly what it is. And the waking up from this so-called, let's say, state or matrix that we're in is not comfortable. It's you go through
we don't like change.
Exactly. You have to go through severe suffering in order for any change to take place. And James always said, there's always, he said, there's salvation in suffering, because only then does all the nonsense peel away and you could get to the core. And that's the only time we can make a significant change, is coming from that.
Well, and to have the change last. That's the other thing. If we just say, oh, we're going to change, we're going to do something this way, if we are just doing it to do it, or because other people told us to, or we're meeting other people's expectations, all of those things, it is not going to last. And addiction is obviously one of the best examples of that. If you stop drinking, smoking, drugs, whatever it is, if you're not doing it because you want to do it, it's never going to last.
No, it will never last. And I will tell you, going through the addictions that I had, one of them was smoking. I smoked for 24 years. Now, what smoking did for me was bury all the things that I didn't want to deal with. So all my unresolved emotional issues I didn't want to look at. And this time when I quit with the help of James, was instead of running away from all these things that I didn't want to look at, I ran at them.
Yes.
And I started working through them. And one by one, I faced them, I healed them, I integrated them till I was able to be free of the whole smoking.
Right.
And that's what it takes, because that's when real change actually occurs, is when you suffer for the light. There's always a breakdown, before the breakthrough.
Right. And darkest before the dawn, all of those.
Exactly. So what we, advocate here is that, number one, like I talked about, you have to take full responsibility for your life. So you get in the driver's seat. Number two is self-awareness. You have to start asking yourself, why do I like the things that I like? Was this something that was handed down to me? Was it, given to me by society? Why do I value what I value? Right? Is it something that society told me I should value, and so forth? You have to know exactly who you are to make these significant changes within yourself. And the third one we talk about is that, this may sound like it doesn't fit in here, but it does, is to clean up your diet. Because until you clean up your diet, you cannot access the vital energy force to come into your body. You cannot think straight and act straight with a toxic mind. So that's what we eat: clean foods, work out. These are very vital to have an abundant life. And I will say, James, he lived a full life. And how do I say that? He didn't miss a beat. He was someone that he woke up at 3 a.m. and had his meditations, had his practices. We went to the gym together. We have our business running. Everything was scheduled, very strict, very disciplined, very on purpose. Until the last day, he was very much mobile, working out in the gym, you know, for anyone who works out, lifting 300 pounds.
Wow.
What is it called? Deadlifting 300 pounds,
Right.
excuse me.
Yeah, you just lift.
Right. So he was very much mobile and active and full of strength and so forth. Now, that's why it's important, because every moment that you're here, if you're not living to the fullest, then what's the point?
Right. Right. Yeah, you know, and I think that's one of the things that we see people do is they're cautious. They're afraid. You know, it's interesting. So as we're recording this, my mother passed away a year ago, 2 days from now.
Oh, wow, okay.
And many the same thing. She and I did not really have a good relationship, but we had a relationship that worked, right? I mean, it was, you know, and I've, you know, learned that her issues, I didn't cause them and I couldn't fix them. You know, that's just kind of the thing. But we'd had a really good conversation. She'd had a really good couple of days. You know, there was really nothing going on. She woke up on a Wednesday morning and didn't feel good, and she was gone by noon. I mean, it was just poof, right? And, you know, and I told people, I said, she decided, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously I miss her and all of those, but she lived her life exactly the way she wanted to. And sometimes people didn't like that because, you know, there were things that she would say and you're like, oh, okay. But, you know, she lived the life, you know, and I mean, this will give you an example of what she was like. She was very organized. Sounds an awful lot like James, right? I think they've met each other up in heaven. And, you know, she had written out years ago what her funeral service was to be like. Made it very easy for me. I had this little piece of paper and I just go, you know, but for one of the songs, she wanted the Frank Sinatra version. And it said that the Frank Sinatra version of I Did It My Way.
Oh, okay.
Right. You know, and now that said, I think she did have a lot of demons and things like that. You know, she was not an addict or anything like that, but she also was not a happy person. And so I feel bad about that, you know, she and I don't, you know, and I've talked to other family, we have no idea why, you know, or what happened in her life, but she did say, this is my life, you know, and she very much, like you were saying, she took responsibility for it. And, you know, so many times we don't do that. You know, I work with people who are dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And I tell them the worst thing is if we die and our headstones say, I wish I would have done whatever, right? You know, and we can't live that way of I'll do it someday, or, you know, all of those things. And, you know, and I've had people say, well, that's a really selfish way to live. And I agree. You know, I'm like, yeah, I mean, you know, to me, that's how we're all going to have the best. If we're expecting the best out of ourselves and everybody's giving the best, wow, right? That's just amazing.
Absolutely. You know, I will say, speaking, you brought up where you said she felt anger, or she had anger. The final and fourth step, what we tell people to do, is to clean up their unresolved emotional issues.
Right. Yeah. And she had a lot. And I think we all do to some degree.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I mean, you don't need to have my background to have those things.
Right.
You know, what happens is that there's a lot of people walking around in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, 70s, take it to whatever number. And, you know, yet they're an emotional child. And, you know, it's the things that happens to us in our formative years, which psychology says is between birth and 14 years of age, that we just don't have the tools to be able to deal with them. So what we do is bury them away, and we don't want to look at it. Now, the way we grow up, that we keep suppressing it, could be someone uses some kind of substance to bury it, or someone binges on television, or someone overeats, or sex,
Right.
or just name your,
Mm-hmm.
name your vice.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of individuals that say, food equals love,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I mostly help and work with
Mm-hmm.
individuals, is helping them get through and
Mm-hmm.
not solving, integrating and healing
Mm-hmm.
their unresolved emotional issue. Because imagine, Deb, you go through life and you experience this, you leave a part of yourself there. You
Mm-hmm.
go to another situation, you leave your part self
Mm-hmm.
there. So now you're just fragmented,
Mm-hmm.
and here you are, and you're not whole.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is go and have you access all these different parts that
Mm-hmm.
you've left around. It's in the shamanic traditions, it's a soul retrieval is the
Mm-hmm.
techniques that I use.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you bring one part back and you integrate that.
Mm-hmm.
First we heal it, then we
Mm-hmm.
integrate it.
Right.
And it's a profound and powerful feeling, for
Mm-hmm.
one. Second, to have that back and be able to go on with your life,
Mm-hmm.
it completely shifts your world. And
Mm-hmm.
I promise you it does. It's a tangible result that you
Mm-hmm.
can feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just some state you go into and you're like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah, I'm
I
all
got a little
better.
high
La,
up
la, la.
here. And
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not. It's actually quite uncomfortable to
Mm-hmm.
do this type of work because it's
Right.
hard work. You have to
Well, and
look at
sometimes it's
things.
been buried for years.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And where my intuitive gift, and I say that it is a little gift that was given
Mm-hmm.
to me, it was not something I asked for, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is I've worked with a lot of individuals who have experienced some things that they can't even recall. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even in their conscious
Right.
awareness.
Yeah, they've buried it so deep. Mm-hmm.
Right. So then what I do is I am able to access what happened and
Mm-hmm.
take them to that
Mm-hmm.
situation, bring it back up, make it
Mm-hmm.
conscious. They could see what happened,
Mm-hmm.
what went on, and take back what they need to take back to
Mm-hmm.
heal. And then you integrate in whole. So what the ultimate objective of doing these one-on-one sessions with me would be to become whole
Mm-hmm.
once again,
Mm-hmm.
WHOLE.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is the only time that you can take a seat in your power, in a
Mm-hmm.
power that was God given to us,
Mm-hmm.
is what we came in with. And
Mm-hmm.
yet we have to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to want it bad enough. And when you have that, you have that
Mm-hmm.
foundation, which is rooted in wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
that's grounded in God. I
Mm-hmm.
promise you, you're a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you can make the universe move.
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, it's interesting. It reminds me of and I'm not remembering the name for this, but when they repair Japanese pottery, they use gold to, and so actually you're highlighting those pieces coming back together with that gold, and showing how important it is that they've come back together. And to me, this is kind of the same thing.
Oh, sure. I could see that. Yes. Yeah, and that's if you think about it, that's what this life is really truly about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are we ultimately doing here? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people talk about, oh, you come here to have success, true
Mm-hmm.
success. Well, what does that even mean?
Yeah, what's success? Yeah, and what is success to me is different than success to you.
Sure, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people can correlate it to having a high position within an industry or a profiting business and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And I will tell you, James and I have both worked with people who make millions and
Mm-hmm.
even billions, and yet they
Mm-hmm.
still feel like they're missing something
Mm-hmm.
in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an emptiness.
Right. And I
And
think we see that
mhm,
with, we're not going to get political, but I think we see that with a lot of what's going on now, is, people, and I think it's, and whether it's, political, you're a celebrity, you're a sports star, whatever, the people who keep trying, to get to that next whatever it is, because it's never good enough.
mhm.
And that could have come from, maybe they were 2 years old and somebody said or did something to them, and I mean, especially like little girls. I mean, I remember being told, that little girls, and because I'm a little bit older than you, little girls didn't do things that I wanted to do, right? No, you don't do that. That's little girls don't do that. And so you grew up thinking that. Of course, we all have weird relationships with money, and all of those things. And yeah, and we end up dealing with them in the wrong way, whether it's the addiction or the always never being happy. I mean, that's probably one of the best things, and getting ourselves into bad relationships, whether it's with a partner, with a friend, with whoever, and it goes back, like you were saying, birth to 14 years old. What the heck happens to us then?
Sure.
And you're right. In many cases, we don't even remember it, but yeah, it's just kind of there under the surface, guiding and making, we're making decisions based on it.
Sure. And we have to ask ourselves, well, why are we like that? And if you look at our system here, especially in the United States, because we're programmed everywhere you look, by your television, by your programs. They're telling us what's important. We give, we admire, what do we admire? We admire athletes and actors and people that should not be admired whatsoever.
The Grammys were just last night, and I did not watch them because I look at that and I think, bleh. I mean,
yes.
And whether it's, and I don't know, a big part, like when they say, oh, this dress was $200,000. I'm like, seriously?
Yes. It's ridiculous. And that's the whole asking yourself, why do I value the things that I value? Right. Because it's been handed down to you. And that's why the way the system has been programmed for people is to keep them limited and stuck within this world. And this world that they have created, like a facade over your eyes, is not the real world. I mean, for the first time, I've actually sat down and I've read the Bible from cover to cover, and that's a task. I will tell you right, that is a task. And and I didn't have any background as far as what it was about, what the stories are. I didn't have anybody explain it to me, meaning like a church. So this is
probably actually better because you didn't have any preconceived.
Exactly. And I didn't want to have it either. So when I read through it, I found it to be the most fascinating book that has to do with our history as human beings.
Right.
And I highly recommend for anybody to read that, just because it opens your eyes to what we've been repeating over and over and over. It will blow your mind. So those are the things, like you just said, they told us as a little girl, we shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing that. And you should give importance to who wore this and that, which absolutely doesn't matter. We need to get back to the fundamental core of why you were even sent here in the first place. It's like, okay, there is a creator. I think a lot of us have forgotten that. And I also believe that within this, since, the whole 2020 thing happened, there's a lot of people that woke up and said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Which is fantastic.
What am I doing with my life?
Exactly. What am I doing here? And what is the most important thing? We've forgotten the most important principle, and that is our creator. You wouldn't be here without it.
Right.
And every single time that we've strayed from that, things have gone way wrong. And the things that have taken place should tell a person that, hey, there is such thing as good and evil. You can see it playing out in front of our eyes. So when would be the time to wake up?
Right. And when we are selfish and only thinking of ourselves, that's when we go down those wrong paths. And people have, obviously varying concepts as to what the greater is. And whatever it is, I think most people think there's something, right? My father, he passed away many years ago, was not a person who went to church. He went to church when mom made him go to church. Somebody died, somebody was getting married, right? His church was the outdoors and everything that stood for. And that, and and when I think about that, I think of how important that is, because that really was, that was where he got his energy. That's where all of those things. And for some people, it's the, going in and communing with nature or whatever. And there obviously are different religions. But yeah, I think there's something that's there. And when we start putting ourselves above that, that's where then we have the problems.
That's right. That's right. And they say the greatest church is inside.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
It's right in
yes,
here.
in your heart, your soul, your whatever it is that we're going to call that.
Yes, yes, and that's absolutely true. And the more you do this cleanup work that we were talking about earlier, the more you get reconnected to that, because the feeling is inside. God is a feeling. It's not somewhere out there in the clouds or
Right.
up in the sky. It's inside. And that's the most powerful spot you can come from. And when people have that, you don't experience fear. You don't experience uncertainty. You understand that there's a perfect law at play and that everything in your life happens on purpose and for a reason. And when you can live from that perspective, you don't have happiness, because happiness comes and goes. No one's happy all the time.
Yeah, that'd be weird if they were.
Yes, it would be very weird. It'd be scary, actually.
Actually, it would be psychotic.
Yes, absolutely. But what you do have is joy. And joy is something, it's a feeling of being content, like full. Like you don't need anything outside of you to make you feel whole inside.
Right.
And that's a really powerful position to be. And I've made it my life's task and intention to be able to do that for other people, because I've done it and I know that it's possible. And had I not gone through the things that I've gone through and the person that I thought I was and what I was to who I am today, I wouldn't have continued this work. And yet I know for a fact that this works. And given if someone is coming from the place that I came from, which there's severe traumas, or if someone has just had a few, bumps in the road and so forth.
It might be very traumatic for them,
sure,
but
exactly. But either end of the spectrum, that's what I'm looking to help, to get people back on and live the life they were created for in the first place to live.
Right.
And to get out of this matrix that we've all been conditioned into, this hamster wheel that just keeps going round and round.
Right.
So get off the hamster wheel.
Yeah, jump off, folks. But I wonder, when bad things happen, James, losing James,
sure,
obviously probably one of the most horrible traumatic things that you'll ever go through.
Agreed.
How do you, or did you say, what the heck? Why have I gone through all this just to do this? Or, so do you have times where you think, obviously then you pick yourself up and you go on, but
sure,
because I think that's the other thing, is people think that they can't question, they can't, they can't have backslide, they can't do any of that. How do you deal with that?
So with James's passing, it was hard. And I'm not going to say it was easy. And I sat here, I'm like, I got this, I'm going to go on. And to your point, I will have to agree, given everything that I've gone through my life up until this point, this probably hit me the hardest. And what I did was, I didn't, first of all, surround myself with a bunch of people. I didn't keep myself going out from here to there to here to there to just keep myself busy.
Right.
I did the exact opposite of that, because I knew if I do that, then I'm not dealing with it.
Right. It's like almost like you're covering up the pain.
Exactly. So I sat with it. I just me, myself, sat with it. And I faced it. And then I had some profound moments of, some experiences that I had. And it was, some of them are, yes, the person is gone and you're going to grieve no matter what. You're going to feel that. And at the same time, I felt this feeling of, let's see if I could describe it. It's almost like there was a presence of the love that we shared that represented our relationship. It was our bond. And I felt that. And I would have never felt or experienced that, when he was here. And second, I sat down and I really thought about, because I was asking myself, okay, well, what did I miss? Were there signs that I should have been looking for? I mean, what happened? Was it an accident? Did it, was he not doing something he was supposed to be doing? All very real questions. And coincidentally enough, there was some things that had happened that led up to the event. And I'll tell you a couple of them. One was, I believe it was 3 days before he passed. We were having a conversation and he was telling me that he felt, we were asking, are you fully living? And his answer was, I might get emotional, but I'll do my best to get through it. Was, my heart, my mind, my soul is full. Which was that, yeah.
That is absolutely incredible for anyone to I just got chills, right?
Yeah.
Because most people might say one of those, I think you said 4 things, right? They might feel one, they might feel 2, but to feel all 4.
Yes.
And I mean, my first thought was contentment.
Yes. And to follow up with that, the night that he passed away, we were having dinner. And at dinner, he told me, because we always have these deep conversations. That's the only thing we do in this house is talk about these things. And he was telling me, and I quote, that if I were to leave this life now, that I'm a happy, grateful man, that I've lived a full life.
Right.
And I kind of looked at him. I'm like, okay, well, that's, shut up. Don't say that.
Yeah. Why are you,
and sure enough, that night after dinner, we got up to go for a walk and we came back and I was doing some things. He was in another room and that's when he passed. Just like that.
Yeah. Again, contentment.
Oh, he was full. I have to say, these last year and the last few weeks before he was here, he was really reaching some insights and some awarenesses that he couldn't really explain it to me either. And because of those things, I know and I feel it that it was just his time to go.
Right.
And when it's our time to go, it's our time to go. It's also led me to believe that each and every single one of us was sent down here with a mission and a purpose to complete.
Right.
And once you've completed that, time's up. Time to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, and he also, I'm just assuming this, he also knew you would be okay.
Somebody did.
Yeah. Somebody told him, but yeah, he knew, because, it's not like he wanted to leave you,
right.
But he knew you'd be okay. And you would go on and, and live whatever is left of your purpose.
Sure. There's that old saying, they say that God will never give you anything unless if he thinks you can handle it.
Right.
So somewhere somebody thinks I'm a mighty woman or something. I'm not sure. I haven't quite figured that part out yet.
And that's the challenge, right? But I think the thing is, so many times people spend their whole lives trying to find that purpose, which is why they, are striving to always, have the best car, the biggest house, the best job, perfect kids, all of those various things. And of course, that doesn't happen. You get the Lamborghini, well, then somebody else has a car that's better than the Lamborghini, or, all of these various things, because there's always something that's better in your mind. Might not really be better, right? Because again, it's just like, your definition of success. It's different for every single person. But how is it, when someone, at what point have they reached where they come to you and they say, I need help?
To the point where they realize that all these things that you just named have no value. Because the only thing that has eternal value is that which can't be lost or taken away from you. That's when they come, because they, like I mentioned earlier, we work with people who are millionaires and billionaires, and you can imagine you could buy whatever you want, whenever you want, do whatever. And yet it's just not
profoundly
filling that
unhappy.
void. It's not filling the void because it's not in the stuff. It's not in the things. Like all these things, whatever material things that you have, you cannot take with you. If you're on your deathbed and you're checking out, you're not going to think to yourself, well, I had a very booming business.
Yes. And I'm going to put all this stuff in my casket with me.
Right. Or I'm going to take, it's not that. It's, you know, it's like, how much did you love? How much did you laugh? How much did you fully live? Were you a principled person? Do you have morals? Do you have virtues? Those are the things that have eternal value. And those are the things that we've, you know, have stepped far away from. And yet I feel like we're at a turning point and people are beginning to see these things and they're coming back to it. These are the things that have actual meaningful, like I said, eternal value to them.
Right.
You know, in James's book, New York Times bestselling book, Harmonic Wealth. In that, he talks about there's 5 pillars in your life that you can define wealth or experience a wealthy life.
Okay.
And how we define wealth, if you trace a word to its origins, it actually translates as well-being. It has nothing to do with money whatsoever. And those 5 keys that we talk about is you got financial, and you have relational, mental, which also includes emotional, and you also have physical, and finally spiritual.
Right.
And when all of those are in harmony, not balance, because we say balance is bogus, because if you look at anything in balance,
there's no balance. Yeah.
No.
People who say work-life balance, I'm like,
yeah,
because that's 50-50. And that's never going to happen.
It's like saying, okay, I'm going to work for 8 hours. So that means I have to go to the gym for 8 hours.
And then sleep for 8 hours. And now I've,
yeah, you're done. Because life is harmonious. You have to move with life. So that's what we talk about. And when you have that, that's true wealth. That's what it means. To be truly wealthy is to have well-being. And it's nothing that money can buy. Has nothing to do with money. So that is very important to understand that you have to harmonize what you're doing in your life, because life, the way life works and laws of nature and so forth, when something happens, something goes wrong in your life, well, life is not going to wait. It's still moving. And at that time, it feels like it's moving even faster.
Right. Right.
So the most important things that you could do for yourself is to work on your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your physical health. You know, all these things is what's going to get you through the life's challenges and tough times.
Right. And back to what you were saying at the very start, and taking responsibility for ourselves.
Yes.
I am not responsible for you. I'm not, and I'm not responsible. I'm not responsible for my husband, right? We can only be responsible for ourselves and the choices that we make ourselves. Do we get input from others? All those various things. Yes. It's interesting with all the turmoil that's going on in the world right now. I try to not get wrapped up in that. Partially because, yes, it is important. It is very important what's going on, but I can't really do anything about it. I need to do what I can do things about, and everything will hopefully work out. And that's kind of one of those, you have to have faith, in whatever. But it pains me when I'm on, Facebook or watching the news or whatever, and I see people who are so upset, and I understand why, but it's also, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And they say,
Sure.
well, I can't. Okay, then, the sky is falling is not the great. I mean, I've survived almost dying 3 times. I have had
Sure.
3 different cancers.
Mm-hmm.
Life goes on. And I tell people I can get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Sure.
And so how am I going to live my life today? And
Yes.
it's what you were saying. What is our legacy? What are people going to do? Are they going to say, oh my God, Deb had the best car and the best house in the world? I would be mortified if that's what they were saying. And we
Oh my
don't. I
goodness,
mean,
yes.
but if they said she was a good friend,
Mm-hmm.
that would probably be it for me,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's just, and you can, you can carry that into your business. What type of boss are you? All of those various
Mm-hmm.
things.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the, when you go to meet your maker, what are they going to say?
Exactly. Are they going to be proud or are they going to be
Mhm.
kicking your butt?
Yeah. Are they going to shoo you down the other direction?
That's
Right.
right. Go back and do it all over
Yep.
again.
Yep. So, well, oh my gosh, we really don't have very much time left. This has been just a wonderful conversation. And would love to do it again because I think we all need to keep thinking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But until then, tell us more about, and we didn't even mention James's other book, which is God, Money, and Sex:
Oh,
Navigating the
yes.
Human Dilemmas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I was reading that. That's very interesting because like
Mm-hmm.
it is talking about the fact that money is not the be all end all, and all of those various things. But tell us a little bit more about what are the, how do people find you and connect with you,
Sure.
and what are the services that you provide?
Sure. You could go to harmonicwealthglobal.com. That's our
Mm-hmm.
website. And you
Mm-hmm.
can find all the courses and classes that we have. I also do mine are one-on-one
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
intensives
Mm-hmm.
with individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You can go look at that as well. That's
Mm-hmm.
harmonicwealthglobal.com forward
Mm-hmm.
slash heal,
Mm-hmm.
HEAL.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to help anyone that wants to come in, book a session. We
Mm-hmm.
work through and making you whole
Mm-hmm.
once again, get
Mm-hmm.
past your barriers and
Mm-hmm.
blocks so that you could live a fulfilling life and
Mm-hmm.
feel good about it. And you could get all the ebook downloads and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is there. You can
Mm-hmm.
find us there. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And we will have a link in the show notes to Harmonic Wealth Global. This really has been absolutely fascinating. It's a challenge for everybody. And for so many people, like we were saying, they don't want to think about it. They
Sure.
really don't want to think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to deal with that icky stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so we don't, and life goes on, we can deal with it or not, and all of those things. But life goes on in a much better way when you do deal with
Mm-hmm.
those things. And so I love that. And I hope people will look at your website, look at your resources, and reach out to you, because a lot, I would say everybody I know needs a little help, right?
Sure. We all do.
Mhm.
I do. We all
Right,
do.
right. Yeah. Well, until we have you on again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Sure. I will say no matter how broken or stained you feel,
Mhm.
there's always an opportunity for you to be born anew.
I love that. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having the most interesting discussion with Bersabeh Ray from Harmonic Wealth Global. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.